Thank you, General. Thank you, Charles, OSS Society, for once again giving me the honor of opening this event with the opening toast. It's such a treat to be behind the bar here at the Ritz-Carlton. This is a replica of the Bar Hemingway at the Paris. Yeah, I'm going to get to the crowd control element in a moment. This bar is an homage to the bar at the Bar Hemingway in Paris. It was designed by Gilles Delamot, who's with us this evening. Thank you again, Gilles. And the choice of hotel brings to mind the Paris Ritz. Of course, we're at the Ritz-Carlton, one of the most infamous chapters of the OSS's illustrious history in World War II. The story of how Ernest Hemingway, with Colonel David Bruce and several OSS officers and about 45 French resistants, found their way through Paris to liberate the Paris Ritz bar, at which point they ordered 50 martini cocktails. As I mentioned, a quick housekeeping note. In recent years since COVID, we've had a bit of an issue with people, a very small but vocal minority, talking through the toasts. Not mine, of course, but others, you know. And Charles and I talked about it, and he assured me he's retained a very large Special Forces officer to police the ballroom during your presentation and ask anyone who's talking to STFU. I love this community with all the acronyms. You know, I had to look that one up. Am I the only one who's reminded of the movie Gimme Shelter, where the Rolling Stones hired, the Hells Angels? Never mind. But I'm asking a favor of you, respectfully. Please don't act like you're at the Ryder Cup, okay? Hey, Charles, maybe next year we'll get Rory McIlroy to. Anyway, all right. So back to the business at hand. What are we going to be toasting with tonight? So while deciding on tonight's drink, Charles and I put on our thinking caps, and we wanted to. Initially, we thought, well, let's recognize the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, and we thought of some drinks from that era, but we couldn't find anything that really was compelling. And then, having spent 16 years as the trademark counsel for the Marine Corps, it occurred to me, this is the 250th anniversary of the Army, of the Navy, and of the Marine Corps. June 14th, 1775, the Second Continental Congress authorized the creation of the Continental Army. October 13th, the creation of the Continental Navy. And last but not least, November 10th, the creation of the Marines. Hoorah! Now, their first recruiting station, of course, was in Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, which prompted me a few years ago as trademark counsel for the Marine Corps to register as a trademark, Born in a Bar. So Charles and I decided to create a drink that would properly recognize the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Armed Forces. We thought about a bunch of different military-themed cocktails, from the Navy Grog to General Patton's Armored Diesel to the Sink Pack Special to the Leatherneck to the B-52 or the Kamikaze. We ruled them all out. Even the French 75, that's named after a howitzer of all things. But then I remembered there's a drink called the Army and Navy cocktail. How perfect. Those are the two original branches of the military. So here in Washington, D.C., we have two institutions that have that name. We have the Army and Navy Club in downtown D.C., and I'm trying to find out, is there a connection to this drink, to that institution? Well, there is some cocktail history at the Army and Navy Club. That was where the daiquiri cocktail made its U.S. debut around 1908. The drink was invented in Cuba around the time of the Spanish-American War, 1898, when the USS Minnesota was making its Great White Fleet tour around the world. They pulled into Guantanamo Bay. The crew went on liberty. The chief medical officer met the inventor of the daiquiri cocktail. He brought the drink back to the Army and Navy Club here in D.C., and that was where the drink made its debut in the United States, and from there it was sort of a launching pad. But there's no connection to this drink, so just file that away in your trivia. Yeah, so then I thought, well, what about the Army-Navy Country Club? And the only cocktail history that I'm aware of at the Army-Navy Country Club is back in 2021, my daughter, Hannah, and my son-in-law, Lieutenant Commander Sean Spada, they had their wedding reception there. And while there's no history there, our bar tab was of historic proportions. I'm still paying that off, by the way. In all seriousness, we're grateful to Sean for his service at sea these last many, many months. And he's an E-2 Hawkeye Naval Flight Officer, and we look forward to raising a glass with him soon. And let's not forget the spouses, for they also serve. So thank you, Hannah. So it seems that the Army and Navy cocktail has no connection to anything local. What I did learn, digging into the history of the drink, it was invented right after Prohibition, around 1934, by a Madison Avenue advertising man, think of Mad Men, a guy named Carroll Van Ark. He was an occasional columnist for the New Yorker magazine. He invented this drink, and if you recognize the name Van Ark, he's the father of Joan Van Ark, who from Dallas and Knots Landing fame. I know, I never watched those shows either. But the drink we're about to have is a classic sour cocktail. What's a sour cocktail? Well, it's the sacred trinity of sweet, sour, and strong. You got drinks like the margarita, the daiquiri, the Tom Collins, the gin fizz, the Jack Rose. Somebody really should write a book about these classic drinks. All right, so let's go about making the drink, and I'll show you how to make it at home. So you start with a chilled cocktail glass. You cut a lemon in half, not rocket science. You squeeze the lemon juice into the glass. About 2 ounces of London Dry Gin. And about a half an ounce of orgeat syrup, which is an almond syrup. And we're using one that's artificially flavored this evening, so we don't have to worry about nut allergies. Now, this would be a great drink if you're hosting an Army-Navy football game party. Navy at the moment has a 63-55 lead in the series, which goes back to 1890, but who's counting, right? All right, so I'm going to ask that you see a cocktail shaker in front of you. I want you to fill that up with ice. You see ice buckets, okay? Now, these shakers are a little tricky. It's 3 pieces. You have a cap, and then you have a strainer, and then you have the main body of the shaker. So everybody fill up their shaker. And you'll also notice we have the garnish. This excellent little cocktail pick is modeled after the Fairbairn Sykes fighting dagger from World War II, OSS standard issue. And when we're all ready, we're going to shake to the sound of music, which I hope you'll appreciate, given the circumstances. Don't start shaking yet. All right, let's start shaking. We're going to shake for the duration of the music. Stand up if you'd like. Dance with your partner if you'd like. Dance with somebody else's partner if you'd like. All right, so everybody have their drink. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Let's tip our glasses to the tip of the spear. Here's to Special Forces and intelligence operations everywhere, and to the 250th anniversary of America's Armed Forces, to all those currently deployed and all the ships at sea. Cheers.